Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
I am audible, right?
Yes.
All right, let's get started in a couple of minutes. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's a Sunday morning, and we have a couple of speakers today for all of you. We have we have Preetham and we have Ashwin, uh, and Preetham will be talking on Pawn the Box Soccer, and Ashwin will be talking about securing containers from day one. Okay, followed by infosec quiz created by Swarsha. All right, just to begin with, I would like to give introduction a bit about Null Ahmedabad and Null. Right, so let me share my screen once. All right, I hope you can see the presentation now.
Yes.
All right, okay. So basically, Null is an open security community, and they have different formats. So basically, the idea is to share knowledge in the area of information security and promote and advance security research, right? And of course, making infosec learning more fun. So basically, like we meet and we discuss a lot of things, new trending topics in the field of information security, and maybe with different activities such as quiz, sort of a hackathon, or maybe a CTF, right? So basically, we are a non-profit organization that was registered uh, as a non-profit society and trust in Pune since 2010, and everything and anything in Null is free and open. Okay, and there's no place for hate speech. Privacy is something again we try to take care about, and there's no place for unlawful activity. Okay, and Null meets take place in multiple cities where infosec enthusiasts discuss about security. So uh, there are different cities in India and around the globe where Null meets happens. and everyone discuss about security and the activities that I shared previously. And one of the format is hands-on workshop that is periodically conducted, and these workshops are basically free. The three formats of these workshops are Hamla, Bachav, and Pulya. Hamla is offensive security, Bachav is defensive security, and Pulya is short skill bridging, right? So short skill bridging where people who are new into infosec and to to check or to advance their skills to uh, for offensive or defensive of the defensive side of the infosec, the skills that is required to get into these domains. The workshop is conducted for such skills are the Pulya workshops. And Null.community is the event hosting platform for Null, and all the events you can see on Null.community, all the previous events, all the archives, all the speakers you can see. You can also propose a session if you want to speak at Null. And like the primary discussion is the mailing list, and all the announcement channel is all the announcement is made on the mailing list. You can find this link of mailing list on null.community. uh, Jobs.null.community is a free job portal for security jobs. You can post jobs and you can apply through this, like if you're seeking for a job, security job, you can sign up there and you can apply through jobs.null.community. It is completely free. Who is a null community member? So anyone who wants to be associated with us is a community member. All right. Even uh, the organization that help us to organize the events, we consider our attendees and audience and the people who take part in the discussion, the speakers, we consider them all as community members. This is the highlight for 2020. More than 81 events happened across the all null chapters. Nearly 137 speaker presented. More than 3,700 people attended meets and workshop around the year of 2020. These are the numbers across the null meets. Null Ahmedabad took a Hamla session on web recon. Null Mumbai had a Hamla session on building Active Directory lab for red teaming. Null Delhi's deep dive into Metasploit, and Bangalore's Hamla on advanced Android penetration testing and multiple combined Hamla with Hack the Box. So there are more such events that are happening across the globe. Uh, there are combined events as well with different communities. So where are we headed? Increasing number of chapters and participation in the community, increased collaboration among various communities to help information security grow. Mentoring students from college and universities, more meeting formats, record and live streams event as well. So we are also recording this event as well. So these are few of the organizations that are supporting us to conduct events and meetups. These organizations are Citrix, ThoughtWorks, Sophos, Ganpat University, Adobe, OpenText, Airtel, Progress Software, Institute of Technical Education, Directiplex, Emirates, Payatu, KPN, and a lot more. So a big thanks to all of these organizations to help us support. So shout out to other infosec communities doing great work locally. These are few of the chapters. I mean, a few of the community that we also collaborate with to conduct successful events and to spread out infosec knowledge. Garage for Hackers, Sysinfo, OAS chapters, DEFCON groups, infosec girls, and many other. So kudos to all these communities. A note of thanks to all the chapter leaders, organizations who have supported us in some format and conducted these meets, uh, and all the volunteers are volunteering us and helping us for hours and hours, uh, and supporting the community here. And thank you so much to attend this live session. All right, let me stop it. Yeah. So first we have Preetham, who will be speaking on the box. Uh, a few of the topics that will be covered is server-side template injection, detection, and exploitation, using TPL map to automate detection and exploitation, escalating SSTI to RCE, then Docker container escaping, command injection detection using source code review. So, Preetham, you're ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. To you. Mike, to you. Thank you.
Sure. Uh, Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I'm Preetham. Today I'll be talking on a vulnerable machine that is made by me. I've named it Soccer. I made it only for educational purposes and to learn how boxes are made. And today I'll just run through a small PPT. Then after that we'll jump onto the terminal, and I shall be sharing the vulnerable machine, the file, the VM, and also I also done a write up. I'll be sharing that. Yeah, let's jump in. I'm sharing my screen. Yep. Can you all see my screen? Right. So this is a vulnerable machine made by me, and little bit information about myself. I'm currently working as an associate pen tester at Clarinet. I'm also an independent security researcher at other platforms like Synac and Yogosha. I'm also part of the infosec community as an author. Most of you might know it. It is one of the largest publications on Medium. And I'm also a YouTuber where I post videos about maths and abacus. Next, before wasting any time, let's jump onto the attack path. Initially, we'll have a web app that is exposed, which is vulnerable to SSTI. And exploiting SSTI, we get an RCE, but that only results in a shell in a Docker container as a limited user. We are not onto the host yet, we are in a container. Next, we need to escalate the privilege in the container to root user via misconfigured cron job, which is writable by the low priv user. Next, we see that in the container, the Docker socket is mounted, which can be used to query the Docker daemon on the host in order to read the sensitive information from all the containers. Then we find some credentials in the database. Then we do some credential stuffing and gain access as a low privilege user on the host. Now we see that there's an internal app running on port 3000, which is a small Node.js app that I've coded. It is intentionally vulnerable to a command injection flaw. We'll exploit it to gain root privilege since the service is running as root. Just a word of caution that just a note that this is an intentionally vulnerable machine. You might feel that this could not be in a realistic scenario, but things were designed in such a way that it is to be exploitable. Think of it as a CTF scenario, but at times it is also realistic, right? Right. So I'll run through the rest of the slides when we get to it. Let's jump onto the terminal. So I have switched on my machine soccer. So here is soccer. This is powered on. Then my Kali would be my attacking machine. Now we shall be working everything here, right? The IP address of soccer is uh, just a second. Yeah, let's run netdiscover to discover the IP. So this is 5000, and yep. Oh, sorry, this is not the IP. This was the previous IP. The IP has changed. Right. So this is the home page of the soccer, and we see that it is a static page. Can you all hear me? Right. So we see that, I hope my screen share is visible, and we see that we have a static page with no buttons or no functionality. Let's quickly look at the source to see if there's anything. I'll zoom in a little bit. We only have some HTML code and a paragraph and a static directory, which is typically not useful for hackers. And yep. So at this step, I'd like to do some directory brute force with the help of FUF. I typically use the word list from seclist. I use the word list from seclist, which is the raft one, raft large. Follow redirects for dash r, and output would be large directories. Then immediately we get a hit on register, and we also get a hit on submit. I'll keep this running in the background, or we can stop it because I know that these are the only two endpoints that are open. Okay, I'll open this in the incognito tab because I have other stuff. Right, so we can go to register here and see what's up with what's there over there. So this is okay. We have a registration form kind of thing. Let's try to fill up the form. Admin at admin. Yep, and register. So we are redirected to another page which says thank you for registering admin. Now my observation here would be the username is being reflected onto the page. Now couple of things that I would check here is one is what is the content type of this page to check for cross-site scripting, and is there any CSRF protection so that we could register other users, and we could also check for other injection attacks like template injections or SQL injections or any other injections. Right, so let's see the request in the burp and see what's happening over there. I'll take it to repeater and just pass it. So we get admin. So if and as I said, the content type is text by HTML. So unless there is some filtering at the client side or server side, we have an XSS to us. Let's try basic XSS payload. Yep. Right. We see that the HTML is getting outputted, reflected as it is. So we got ourselves an XSS. This is the first bug. But as I said, this is a vulnerable machine and we need to get shell access and again root access. So we need to find some sort of RC. Let us try to put quotes or some bad characters and see what happens. I'm just putting a single quote. There's nothing happening. There's no error or anything. The code is reflected again. Let me put some comments and URL encode. Okay, so there's nothing happening. I'll also try since it's a unicorn server, it's a Python server. Let me try giving a payload of SSDI. So if this works, then we should get 4444. That is, let's see. So we get an internal server error, right? So let's see. I don't think I have closed this. Right. So initially we got an internal server error, which is very interesting. If I try to probe it a little more, then I've got 4444. Now this confirms SSTI, but we are not sure what the template engine is. Now let me quickly go to the ports template injection, where we can see about how to detect it. There's a nice diagram that they've made. So right. So initially we have detected. Now we need to identify the template engine. So many programming languages and frameworks, they offer various template engines. For example, we have Jinja 2, as I said. We also have stuff like Twig, which works for PHP, and many more. So in order to detect template injection, so they are saying to fuzzing the template by injecting a sequence of special characters, which we have done using characters like dollar, brackets, quotes, double quotes, etc. Then, and again, they're saying this can sometimes lead to excesses, which we had. And now we need to identify the engine. But before going to identifying the engine, let's see in what context this would be vulnerable at a code level. So when they're saying when we have a code which is written, like let's say you have registered for any service and you get a welcome email. So most of the times it would be the content would be the same, only your name or email would change. So they are called as placeholders. So your email or your name would be your placeholder, and that would be changed dynamically based on your input. So that is where most of the bugs arise. So what happens is, if you see here, they are trying to get the query parameter greeting, and they are changing it dynamically, right? So it would be something like username. Okay, so you can go through this, but another interesting stuff would be right here. This is the email. So as I said, this is for Twig. It is trying to render the template dear first name, and again it is taking it from an array, right? But this would not be vulnerable because this is just a string. If you see, this is everything is in a string. But what happens is, if they try to append it directly with the get parameter, then it would be vulnerable because we could inject stuff and break the codes. That's how template injection works. Now let's get to detecting the template engine. So right. So here they have couple of template engines, Smarty, Mako, Jinja2, Twig, and other unknowns. So let's try to follow this flow chart and try to look at this note, right? So if I put dollar 7 times 7, dollar 7 times 7, then it is reflected as it is. There's no execution happening, and if I give 7 times 7, I'm sure it would be 49 from what we have seen. Let me close this open it in P. 7 times 7. Right, we get 49. So the mathematical expression is getting evaluated at the server side and it's getting reflected. So if I give 7 times in code. So here we have a code, that's the difference. We are multiplying 7 with a quote. So if I put a quote, so we're getting the 7 outputted 7 times. So now we are in a stage to identify the template engine. So let's say if the payload 7 times 7 returns 49 in Twig and 7777 in Jinja 2. So we can confirm that this is Jinja 2 because we got this output in Jinja 2. If this was a PHP framework, then we would have got 49 for the same input. So this is how we can detect the template engine. And now that we have detected the template engine, we can exploit it to gain command execution. In general, server-side template injection is much more dangerous and critical because it is sorry. In general, server-side template injection is dangerous than client-side injection because the code is evaluated server-side. So we could execute code at the server level, and we shall be automating it with the help of TPL map. Now, TPL map is a tool developed by Codingo, if I'm correct. Uh, right. So this is TPL map. Just like SQL map, SQL map is used to automate and detect various SQL injection flaws. TPL map is the same, but it is for template injection. So this is a template injection, code injection detection and exploitation tool. This is a Python based tool, and here we need to pass the URL that we want to check, and the parameters also we can provide if we have already identified it manually. We can do that. Then it will try to see what all it can do, and if we can get a shell with the help of OS shell command. This OS shell is a flag which is also there in SQL map. It is also a flag which tries to get RC with the help of the current flaw, which is SSTI. And this TPL map supports various template engines. So you have the list here, but what we're interested now is Jinja 2 because we have a Python app and it supports for RC and all the rest of the stuff. Right. So there's also a burp extension. You could download it, but I have the tool with me. So let me try to run the tool. So we can pass the URL. The vulnerable URL is okay. I have the command. So I have the command over here. This is optpl map. U is the URL, and this would be the vulnerable URL and the endpoint. E flag is for the engine, which we have detected manually, which is Jinja 2 in this case. And then we have the post body, post request body. So this is the dummy body. And yep, so let us try until here. I think I need to check the URL once. I don't think the URL is same. Yep. Right. So if I enter, okay. So TPL map says it is unable to detect the template injection in whatever case. Okay, if I remove the Jinja 2 and it will try to run checks against various payloads, sorry, various engines, it says it's not injectable. But if we try manually, we're getting the output. So either there should be some sort of protection which is not allowing malicious payloads, but I don't think so since this payload just went through and it worked fine, or there is some protection for automated tools, right? Let's see what is happening, and I'll do is I'll proxy the traffic of TPL map uh, via another proxy on burp and then forward it to the soccer app. So I'll just create a new proxy. I'll just run it on loopback. I don't want to expose it. Then I'll redirect it to 192.168 and 5000 port. I just click OK. So if I just change the URL here to localhost 8888, it ideally the traffic should be proxied in burp. Let's check that. HTTP history. Yep, so we have all the traffic that's going through. We can confirm that this traffic is coming via TPL map based on the user agent. If you see the user agent here is TPL map. Now, so this request is same, and what is the payload it's trying to do is it's trying to, let's try to decode it. Right, it's trying to run the eval function, and it's also doing a sleep. There's again another base64 encoded string, which is true. Okay, it's trying to run some blind payloads, I guess. So what's happening? Why is it not working? If I so here it's trying to run required child process of, yeah, it's trying to execute using the exec sync function of required child process. Child process is a module in Node.js. I think it's also there in Python. I'm not sure. It allows you to execute system commands using the programming language. It also offers its API against functions like fork, exec, exec-sync, and etc. These need to be used very carefully because command injection flaws can be easily arised in these cases. Right. So here there should be some sort of protection. If I take it to repeater, and the only difference here is if I take this payload and if I pass it here, right. So here I'll try to give the typical SSTI payload. We're getting 9, but here I will give the same payload. We're getting 3 times 3. The only difference is the user agent. So if I change the user agent to something, then we are getting 9. So here there is a very poor protection provided by the app where it is filtering the automated tools traffic with the help of some a set of user agents, which we see very normally in the wild. So small tip from my side, whenever you are doing content discovery or fuzzing anything, try to use the random user agent flag. It will help you find better stuff. It has helped me previously as well. Right, try to use random user agents. So here, if I change the user agent, it's working fine. Now, in the TPL map, we have a header, we have a flag where we can add the user agent. So if I add the user agent to another user agent and run it, so it says it is vulnerable. Uh, it is vulnerable, as well as the engine is Ginger 2 engine has confirmed injection with the flower brackets. And the privileges that we have is we can do code execution. We can also achieve a reverse shell, file write and file read. Everything is all right. Cool. Uh, Before directly running OS shell, let's see what's happening and how TPL map is running. with the help of a small command. I'll try to run the id command, and I'll intercept the request, and we'll see how it is working and see the payload it's running. Right, so this is okay, just checking something, I think. Forward. Okay, I think we can give the engine now. We can give the engine as Ginger 2. It will. Right, so here we have the stuff. So let us take this to repeater and see what's the output. Okay. Right, we got the output as www data with the user ID 33. So we are running as a low privilege user, but let's try to look at the payloads. So here we have the final payload which is working. So let's try to decode this. Right, and we will also base64 decode it. Sorry. Right. So not an expert in Python, but we will try to see what's happening here. Uh, it's trying to use the eval function. Eval function, as you know, it's very dangerous when the user input is directly going into it. Then it's trying to decode some base64 string, right? Some base64 string. What is this? Let's see. Right. So here we have here it's running the command. So it's trying to import the OS module. OS module in Python is a module which helps you to run system commands using Python code, and they're using the popen function. Popen function, as I said, can be used to execute commands, and it's again trying to import base64 and then again decode it, and again decode and read. So I think this should be id. I think this should be the command that we try to run. So let's see. Right, so this is id command. So this line of code is where the malicious command is being executed, and then we have the other loops where the actual template injection is working. So I'm not very good at this stuff, how it is working exactly internally, but I could understand that it is running this command with the help of some base64 decoding and using the eval function. Right, now let's jump on to gaining a shell. As I said, we have the OS shell function flag, which will directly give us a shell. Right, we have a shell now. Let's try the id command. Who am I? So we are www data, and if I run hostname, we have a random id. So this could typically mean that we are in a container, right? We are in a container now. We are not on the host socker. Now at this stage, what I'll do is I'll try to get a proper shell uh, with the help of a payload that I got from Pentest Monkey. So I'll try to get this. Before that, I'll get my IP. So my IP is 64.130. 64, yeah, it's the same. I'll just run a small server on 8001 port, and I'll duplicate, and I'll also listen on 4444 port. Right. So now I'll get the python shell.py, put it in temp directory. At the same time, run it using Python. So what will this do is it will try to get the download the Python shell from my server. Okay, I haven't put the port. It will output it to temp directory with the name kk.py. Then I'm running the command which will execute this Python code. I need to put the port number 8001. Right. So we have a hit, but we don't have a shell. Right. Let's see what's happening. Okay. Mhm. Let me change the port number. Oh, okay. It's getting saved as Python. I think some issue with this. Oh, this must be a capital, I guess. Yeah. So we should have O as capital in the duplicate command. That's fine. So if I take it to a new pane, uh, we have a proper shell now. Let us try to get a pty shell using python -c import pty dot spawn pin bash. Right. Now we can see that mm, we are running as www data in the container. Now it is our duty to escalate privilege to root user either in the container or in the host. At this stage, what I'll do is I'll typically run privilege escalation scripts like linpiece or linenum or any other script, then try to see what all is running in the machine. While that is running, what I'll do is I'll also manually go through some interesting files. As we can see in this directory, we have the app.py. So what is app.py? Okay, there's no. So app.py, I think this is the main file that is running the soccer application that we have seen. So right, so we have the register, then we have on submit we have a post. It's trying to get the username. Then see, as I said, we have a poor protection with the help of user agent. There is a protection here saying if the request.headers matches TPL map, then it's directly outputting it without any without running the template. In the else block, you can see that it is running the template function and giving outputting the name by appending the value, by appending the name that is sent via the post body. So this is very similar to what we have seen on the ports figure page on SSTI. So it is vulnerable because the output, the user input is being appended directly into the template string. That's why we are having the RC, right? And of course, the content type was set to HTML. That's why we had XSS, right? And some other interesting file. I'll remove all these Python shells. and we have a log.py. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have a log.py. Okay, so in log.py also we have some RC script, right? But actually, this was done from previous exploitation, but I'll quickly change it. Okay, that's fine. Here I can do two things. I can run the linpiece. For those of you who are not aware of linpiece, linpiece is a privilege escalation script which tries to automate all the checks that have to be done on a Linux machine. But this module also offers script for Windows as well. It's called WinPiece. You could also use it when you're doing some privilege escalation. But we can run the linpiece. I have already downloaded it in my, yeah, I have it. So I'll try to download it and run it. Right, so I will run it. So this is running. While this is running, in other tab, what I've done is I have been running the pspy tool, which is which spies which runs in the background, and it gives us what commands are being run by all the users on the machine, and if there are any cron jobs or anything, we can see that. So now this all the output is from the linpiece, so it will go on for a while. So while that is running, let's see what it has given us. So right, so we're on a Linux machine, Ubuntu 18.04. I'm not sure if there's any kernel exploits available. Sudo is not there. Interestingly, we have docker.sock. I'll talk about this later. Environment variables, Python pip version. Okay. Right, as expected, we have some exploits against the, I think this is against the kernel version. Assuming this is CV 2021 and we have Ubuntu 18. Right, so here AppArmor not enabled. Is this a container? Yes, it's a Docker. Am I inside a Docker group? No. Is it vulnerable to these? These are normal Docker CVs. It's not vulnerable against those. Then we can have the container capabilities. Container capabilities, we have a DAC override. Let's see what this is. Allows a non-root user to full system access, bypasses file read and execute permission check. Right, this is very interesting. This could be one of our attack vector. Let me have the man page. Bypasses file read and execute permission checks. We could also see it on GTFO bins. GTFO bins. So we don't have any. Don't have anything here. So let's see. What else we have? Available software. There's nothing out of the normal. Processes running. We have, interestingly, we have a cron job that's being run by a root. It is trying to run uh, user local bin python against app log.py. If you see, this is running as a root user and it is running on the app log.py file which we have seen. Cool. I think we got our attack vector. First, let's try to explore further just for learning. We have only one port running on 5000 port, that is exposed. No password files, etc. Right. Cool. So as we know that the root user is running this file, I've placed this uh, exploit code over here. But what I'll do is I'll change the port to 6666 in the log.py and I'll listen to it over here. So I think this cron job runs every 2 minutes or 1 minute. So as of now we are at 6:30. Yeah, so it just ran. Ours was a good timing. So it just ran. So now we got root access, but is it on the host? No, we are still in the container. We are still in the container, but we are running as the root user in the container. Now our job is to uh, escape from this container using whatever techniques. So before I jump on to the exploitation, I just want to show you this resource that this was actually my inspiration to make this box. I'll copy the link and I'll share it here. So you can give it a read. I'll also list it in the resources section. So they explain about everything, how Docker containers works, and what is the internal working of Docker containers. What are some protection mechanisms? As we have seen, App Armor in the lin piece output. Here it is. We have Application Armor. It is also called as App Armor. We also have SE Linux, Security Enhanced Linux. We have non-root users in containers. So ours was this case. I have intentionally not run the Python server as root, although it was running in a container. Then we have some other capabilities, etc., some CVs. Then how to pen test a Docker, right? So this is it. So let's check for socket, Docker socket, right? So Docker socket, it's the whenever we run Docker command, it uses an API, and internally we have a background service which is known as a Docker daemon that is used to communicate, that is used for running any command. So when a user uses Docker client command, a request is made, HTTP request is made to the API with the help of this socket. So assume it as we have a Docker client and we have a Docker server, right? So whenever a user runs something like Docker container ls or any command like that, it will be communicated with the daemon and a HTTP request will be made to the API using this socket. Now by default, Docker supports Unix socket, but it also supports a file descriptor and a TCP socket. But by default, it is Unix. So we can use the Docker socket to communicate with the Docker daemon using this Unix socket. How we can do that? I'll show you. So there's an awesome resource on the Docker documentation site which gives you the various API it offers. But for now, uh, I have uh, I have I just have the command which helps us enumerate all the containers that are running in the host. Now this will enumerate not only the containers in the all the containers in the this Docker, but it also checks with the host containers. So we might have a chance to gain information about the host. So if I run this command, I got the output. So the command is we are running curl with Unix socket flag. We are running it against a Docker socket, and this is the API. As I said, it runs and it will be communicated via this socket. We have this endpoint, this Docker API. Then we are using the JSON for prettifying the output, and we are using the all method to get information about all the containers. So if you see, we have a lot of containers, right? So we have the soccer container. It is running on public port, private port 5000. Then it is up since 20 hours and some network settings, etc. And here is the critical part. The Docker socket is mounted in the container, and we have the read write privilege to be true. This is how we were able to exploit this flaw. Then we have a MySQL running. Okay, so this is running on 3306 port that we have seen in the initial nmap. Then right, so we have some other containers as well. This might be the old containers that are running. So as of now, we have seen two important containers. One is the soccer one and the other is the database one. Now, since we have a database container, let's try to query some information about the database container. So this endpoint, we can pass the container ID and get the information about individual containers. Here we were getting from all containers. Here we are getting from individual containers. So let's run that. Right. So this is only about the MySQL container. Right. It's trying to run Bitnami service MySQL run.sh. It's using the Bitnami container image. Here we have it. Not here. Uh, we had it in the up. Host name is, that's what we have used in the ID. Then we have an environment variable, and in environment variable we have the user root passwords. So as many of you know, typically uh, if you want to use credentials in the code, they are not hard coded but loaded from environment variables. So this is the environment variable then that we have the passwords of. So we have a user, a password, and another password. Let's try to use these passwords to connect to the database. So I'll just show you the initial nmap. We have a MySQL service running. Let's try to connect to this. So the user was, I think, yep, the user was Ramesh. The password was I love cricket, and we are connecting to a remote host. So that's why I'm passing this H flag. I keep forgetting the IP. Sorry. Right, so we get access to the database. Let's try to enumerate this database. Show databases. Use MySQL. Show tables, I think. Yeah, show tables. We have soccer table. Let's try to. We have the username passwords. Select star from soccer. Right, so we have a set of credentials and right. So since we have a set of credentials, we'll try to find for login panels or any other service where we can log in, As of now, we have only seen SSH, and the web app that we have seen didn't have any uh, login panel or any registration as such. We had registration, but that was just a dummy one. So we will try to use these credentials and try to gain access to the SSH service. Right, I have already already copied all the passwords in the dbpass file and users in the db users file. Since we have SSH open, I'll try to use Hydra to brute force against the SSH service. So I'll use SSH, and I'm hoping this is the correct command. Right. Okay. Okay. I had to pass it like this. The target and the protocol SSH. So it says there's a valid password found for Viru against this password. Okay, let's try to use this SSH Viru at 192, 168, 64, 128. Right, now we are on the host. If you see, we are on the host, but whereas in the other shell, in the this shell, it was in the container, right? So now since we are in the host, let's try to read the initial flag user.txt. So we have the user.txt. All right. Now our job is to escalate to the root user on the host. As I said, again I'll be running the linpiece file, linpiece script. So I'll quickly run it. Wget 192, 168, 64. Right, I'll run this in a terminal, and in another terminal I'll try to enumerate locally. So since linpiece is running, I'll also try to see what files are there in this machine on the host. So typically I start with op directory. We have a containerd, we have a node app. It's interesting. Then we have a test file. Who is the owner of this? Root is the owner of this. Interesting. So let's output it. So QS, they're using the QS module. They're using HTTP as well. They're using body parser. So body parser, there was a challenge in I think last year's Google CTF where it was based out of body parser. They're using the Express framework to host this app. Then they're creating the server. Interestingly, they're also using child process for whatever reason. Then they have a small form, and upon a post request to this endpoint, they're taking the request body and sending it to qs.parse. So QS, I think QS stands for query string, not QS. Yeah, so not QS. So this is a pretty famous npm module. It has a lot of downloads, weekly downloads. So QS it parses this query strings. So let's say if we have given, yep. So if we give this input, it will try to equate it to this, right? You can give a bit of reading on this. So it will try to parse all the strings, even if it is nested. So this is using that, and it is using cp.exec. What is cp.exec? So CP is the variable for child process. So child process, they are using the exec function. So what is child process exec? Child process npm exec. Yeah, so we have the official node documentation. So yeah, child process.exec. So it is running the command to run, right? So we have it. It is executing a command directly. If you see, they're importing it and exec on this test file against these arguments. So this will all be a single command that will be run on the Linux terminal. So let's see. They're running it on the parameters.param1. So first param they're using it. Right. So it is running on 3000 port. So let's see if we can access the 3000 port. But we haven't seen it in the nmap. I'm not sure. So we cannot connect to it. But can we connect to it using localhost? Okay. Wget permission denied for saving the file, is it? Connection refused. Right, so we have a TCP service running on 3000 port. Let's look at the linpiece, it might have finished. So our user is part of a lot of other groups also, which is important, which is interesting. Then we have the service information, environment information. Again, it's saying some experts are available. I'm not sure because I have made this machine last year. There might have been newly discovered kernel exploits. I haven't tried them. Right, these are the running processes. So we have this start soccer, which is run by root. It is trying to start the Unicorn server on the 5000 port as the user www data. So we know how the soccer app is running. I'll also show you the source once we get the root. Here I'm trying to look for anything interesting. Yep, so we have a 3000 port that's running locally, and we also have a high port 42,000 something. Let's try to see what's running on the 3000 port. I'll use SSH tunneling to tunnel the port onto my attacker machine. So what I'll do is I'll click enter tilde and C. Okay, what I've done is I've I've run this. So if I do a question mark, just a second, I'm trying to get the help. Right, so this is the help. So this will help us to run some commands using the SSH. Since we are using SSH, so for example, if you use this, we type this character sequence, then it suspends the SSH connection. Then we have a couple of other things, forwarded connections. So what I have done is I have used this one to open up a command line. Right. So I'll use that. I'll use a local forward. I'll I'll forward it to port 3000, which is running on 3000 port. So this is a local port. This is a local port. I mean 3000 is running locally. This is my remote port. So it will be running. It will be forwarded remotely. So forwarding port done. Now we could see the forwarded connection with the help of this character sequence. Okay, sorry. Right. So the following connections are open. Okay, I'm unable to deduce what is that. But let's try to access localhost 3000 now. Right, so we have the service running now. As we know, parameter 1, they are using it for exec function. parameter to for what for other reasons. So admin bin sh command not found. Right. So straight away we have an RC. So we have ID running as root. So what's the host name? Host name is soccer. Awesome. So let's try to gain a reverse shell and we'll wrap up. Uh, Python shell. I'll just change the port to some other port because I think we are listening on the port elsewhere. Right, so I'll listen on 7777 and I'll try to run the command. Since the file is downloaded, so I think we'll have a shell. Yep, so we have a shell. I think this is root. Host name is soccer. Awesome. So let's go to the root folder and grab the flag. Uh, root.txt. Right. So we have the flag. So before I wind up, I'll just show you how this is running. I have created two services. So if we look at run.soccer, it is running a Docker app. And as I said, the Docker socket was mounted onto the container like this. So that's why we were able to query the Docker API using this. And we had another service which is MySQL service. If you go to this service, it's using Docker Compose. So we can read the Docker Compose file. Right. Interestingly, it is stored in the environment here. That's why we were able to see it in the container. It is running on 3306 port, but it is exposed to 4000 port, and it is using the Bitnami MySQL image. And yep, that's it. Thank you all for attending, listening to my session. I shall be sharing the resources with the organizers. I'd like to thank Kuldeep for giving me this opportunity. And just one last word, very big thanks to Null community. I've got my first job using the Null jobs portal. So yep, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Pritam. It
Yeah,
was a
welcome.
great session. And all right. So let's move on to the next speaker, which is who is Ashwin. And Ashwin will be speaking on securing containers from day one. Uh, so, yep, Ashwin, you're there. You're ready. Yes. All right.
Hey everyone.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. On to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Let me know if my screen is visible.
You can. You can. Like we can see.
Awesome. All good. So shall we start? Awesome then. Hey everyone. Welcome to my talk on securing containers from day one. So thank you everyone for joining in. So a little bit about me. So I am a security consultant at Payatu, and with Null community, I manage study groups where different folks come together and learn about different security domains, and also contribute to the other. And I also contribute to other communities. You can find me on 0x Cardinal at almost all the places. So yes, so let's talk agenda. uh, what are we going to do? So we are going to see what containers are and why we need containers, the difference between virtual machine and containers, where uh, most people confuse. Then we will talk about a bit on C groups and namespaces. Then I'll give a basic primer on Docker, how to operate with it. Then how to optimize the builds and how that build optimization will help further in security. And then I'll talk about some security best practices and some tools that I find handy while managing the security. And then I'll share some resources, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So for security, we are going with the context of pre-build security, like securing the Dockerfile and stuff. So yeah, that's for the agenda, and let's move ahead with what are containers. So containers are nothing much, but they are just another Linux process, which is just isolated from other processes running on the same host. So if you run a Linux server on this Linux, if you run Docker on Linux host, it will the Linux in the Linux host, it will be there will be one process that will be created for the Docker image that we have pulled and run. So containers are nothing but just another Linux process which is isolated from other processes running on the host. So for isolation, we will be talking about the C groups and namespaces. So first off, why do we need containers? So the first thing that came was that developers were finding it very much difficult on how how to make sure that whatever they have developed works on each and every machine, because earlier it used to happen. Even now, if you are not using this containerized environment, this used to happen, that it is working on your system, but it might not work on any other system or cloud environment because of the dependencies and other things. So we need containers for that, and there are plenty of benefits of containers, like quick development. We just spin up a container, there no overhead load timing, so it spin up quickly. And modularity is one thing that makes it a very handy tool for developers. So let's do some myth busting. uh, the virtual machine and containers are a bit different. So when we talk about virtual machines, so virtual machine are managed by the software layer called hypervisor, so which isolates other VMs with each other, and it allocates the hardware resources to each VM. So each VM has a direct or virtualized access to the CPU, memory, storage, and the networking resources and stuff. So if you see the diagram on the right side, you can see there is the basic, the main infrastructure, and on top of it, there is a software layer called hypervisor, upon which the virtual machines are hosted. And each virtual machine consists of a guest operating system. So it does not matter on which operating system you are hosting a virtual machine. Linux machine can host Windows virtual machines, and even vice versa. So that is about the virtual machine. So virtual machine has a guest operating system, due to which there's a large overhead of things and dependencies that comes along with it. Whereas the containers share the OS kernel, the host OS kernel, and gain access to the hardware through the capabilities of the host OS. So there's a limitation, like we will not call it a limitation. It just it's just helping us develop in an environment that we are comfortable with. So we have our infrastructure. If we look at the diagram on the left side, we have the infrastructure, and then we have the host operating system, on top of which there is Docker, and Docker manages all the containers and the application that is running. So this containerizing makes like these containers are very small, they are very fast, and they are very portable as compared with the virtual machines. So uh, so these the containers can be helpful in many places. If we are dealing with microservices, small components, like small components which can be deployed and scaled individually, uh, will be very helpful, where the Docker seems really helpful for that. For multi-cloud environment, containers are used for automation. um, if we go and automate the different stuff with virtual machine, it's not like we cannot do that, we can do that, but with the containers we have APIs, and it is generally very much ideal for the CI/CD pipeline. So this is all about the virtual machines and the containers. So now we have seen in the first slide that we talked about that it's a Linux process, that where we isolate the that process from the parent processes. So for that we will see about C groups and namespaces. So these are the kernel features that are already present in our Linux systems. So for namespaces, so what are namespaces? It is what a container can. It defines what a container can see. So to do that, it uses syscall. So let me show you a demo for the namespaces. Um, we will share how the namespaces work using Unshare. It's a Linux utility, and creating namespaces for users and networks, and we'll see uh, how much different things are when we create a new namespace. So this is the terminal. Let me zoom it for you. Okay. So okay. So we are going to see about the namespaces, the user namespace and the network namespace. So let me open tmux over here, so that because we will be needing it. Okay. So let's do a sleep some command, and let's see uh, what PID it has to offer. Let me zoom in a bit. For sleep command, this is the PID. We'll take that. mm, we'll take that into consideration at later stage. But let's go back and kill this. So now, what we are going to do is, okay. So we have got the PID, and then we'll pass that PID to read link. Read link doc, then the PID that we have copied with ns and user. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we have this open. Let's do this one more time. We have this PID. Now, if we see, we can check it like this. What we are doing is we are taking the PID and we are trying to understand what user namespace it belongs to. So for now, it belongs to this user namespace. Okay, so uh, whatever command we run, it will be this. And if we see read link /proc, dash dollar dollar. And yeah, so what this is going to do is it's going to read the link, and it's taking the process ID of this terminal, and it is doing the same thing as it is showing the user ID. So the both the user IDs are the same, because all it is doing, it is running in the same bash environment. So now let's kill this. Now what we will be doing is, uh, let's paste this. So what this is doing is, it's giving a shell prompt. For my system it won't work because I have a default prompt that is enabled, but if you have a normal prompt it will work. So this will give the user, and the unshare is the utility that will help us in the creating the namespace. Then it will create a user and map it to root. So if we do, now we can see it's a root, but the thing is, it will not allow me to perform any root privileged access and activities. So this is namespace where we can act as this user. And now what we can do is, let's do the same thing, sleep 10,000, and then let's go over here, and then ps aux a. What this is doing is, it is giving me all the process IDs, and we are going to do the same thing. Read link, we are first taking the process ID of the bash and passing it to the namespace username, which gives us the user of this user, the process ID of namespace of this user. And now what we are going to do is, we'll pass the sleep 10,000, sleep whatever it is, its process ID to namespace and the users. It So see, it's giving a different namespace. So it means that the sleep command, it's working in a different user namespace. So this is one namespace that we are considering. There are 7 different namespaces, as I remember. So let's see one more. Let me close this, exit from here. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. Uh, I have a normal shell over here. If we do ID, it's giving the my who am I? It's giving my username. It's cool. Now, what we can do is, let's do here IP link. It has given me these all stuff that we can work with, right? Now, let's create a network based namespace. So over here, you can see these all are the stuff that we have. Let me zoom it. Yeah, these all are the we have local host, then we have tunnels, Ethernet, and whatnot. So now we have created a user namespace. Now, if we do the same thing, we do not have much like bond dummy tunnel. We don't have sorry, bond dummy Ethernet. We don't have all of that. So we have localhost, and then 60 none, tunnel none. So this is so even if you try to ping anything, we won't be able to, because there is no internet connection in this namespace. So I hope this gives you a bit of understanding on how containers define namespaces, so that it can restrict the user to see, restrict the user to see whatever is being required. So, yeah, that's about namespaces. now if we go for C groups, so C groups are, we have seen with the namespaces on what the user can see. Now if we look at C groups, it defines what a container can use or access. It also uses syscalls to do so. So it consists of so the memory and the processes that are running are controlled by C groups. So I have added its practical in the resources section, so you can go there and have a look. I will share the slides after the session is over. So for folks who are new to Docker and containers world, uh, let me give you a brief primer about the Docker. First off, Docker itself is not a container. Many people confuse this, that Docker is a container in itself. So in itself, it is not a container. What Docker is Docker is a container engine. So what is container engine? It is a piece of software that accept user requests, include command line options, pull images, and from the end user perspective, runs the container. So it is just it takes the container and it helps them run. And in order to do the same thing, there are different container engines as well, but the Docker is the most famous one. So if we go and see the basic architecture that Docker works in, it's a client server architecture. Initially a client does the different commands, Docker pull, Docker build, Docker run. And what it does is it connects to a Docker daemon, and it sees if the image is already present or not. And if it's not present, it goes to the registry. In case of Docker, it's Docker Hub, or if you can host your personal, that's a different story on its own. So it goes to the registry, it pulls the image into the Docker host, and from there it creates different containers. So this is the basic architecture on how the Docker works. Uh, so there are different images which are stored in registry, from where it pulls the images to create different containers. So there are three keywords over here: images, registries, and pull the image. So images are different. What to say? Uh, Images are a kind of base on which the different containers are built upon, and suppose for running a Ubuntu container, we pull a Ubuntu uh, image. So for that scenario, Ubuntu is the name of the image that we are pulling. So which are stored in the registry, that is Docker Hub, and from where it pulls the image and to create different containers. So this is the first thing. Then generally a Docker file is used to build a container. So Docker file is nothing new, nothing much in when we are talking about the containerization. So what Dockerfile contains is it contains commands and instructions that helps in building the containers. So in next slide we will be seeing how Dockerfile looks like, and what are like how it is how it operates. So and if you want, so Dockerfile allows you to run a single container, but if you want to run a multi-container Docker application, like one of your Node.js application is in one container, and the it has to contact the MySQL server on a different container, so you can achieve that flexibility with the Docker Compose tool. So Docker Compose tool allows that flexibility, when that we can take that we can take different containers and uh, help them talk to each other, so that we have a complete structure, even though we are being modular. So there are common commands that we run on a day-to-day basis. Docker pull in order to pull the image, then Docker run is self-explanatory. It is used to run a container from the image that is being defined. Then Docker build, it is used to build a container from a Docker file. But if you are using a Docker compose file, then you have to use Docker compose up. And to see what are the active containers, we will be having Docker PS, which lists down all the active containers. So for now, while we are talking about the containerization and Docker, with every run, copy, and add instruction in Dockerfile, a layer is created. So with every process that happens, a layer is created on top of each other, and these are the intermediate layers which upon build which helps in the complete building, but stay keeping intact the whatever things have happened in the previous layer. uh, so yes, that is about the basics of Docker. Now we will be looking at the Docker file. So if we look at the line number 2, it's from Nginx latest. So it is pulling the Nginx image from the Docker hub, that is the registry. Then it is copying the index.html file on our host system and sending it to the user share nginx html directory inside the container. So it is just copying the line number 5 and 6 is just copying and pasting the files inside the container. And line number 9 is we are exposing the container port to the host so that we can interact with it. And we are running some command in the terminal inside the container. So this implementation is can be kind of insecure, and we will see how. So keep an eye on the add command, and then we will be discussing about why we should consider using copy command instead of add command. So let's talk about the optimization, the build optimization. We have talked about layers, right? So the more number of layers and more number of processes that we are running, uh, it affects the performance of the our container. So we the most the we what we can do is minimize the number of layers, and what it will do is it will improve the performance. Then we can talk about multi-stage builds. It's a very interesting concept and very helpful in optimizing builds in Docker. So let me tell you what a multi-stage build is. Suppose you have a what to say Golang code. So in Golang code, you extract a binary out of that and you run it. So it is possible to do the same thing in a single container. But what happens is it takes time, and after the binary is extracted, there remains tons of unwanted stuff like Golang binary and dependencies associated with it. So we don't need those things. So while we talk about multi-stage builds, what it does is it creates two containers. In the first container, we compile the binary and extract. We compile the binary and save it in the container. And in the second stage, what we do is we copy the binary from the first stage and just keep the binary of that into the container so that we can use it. And that the second binary will be of our use, as we don't need Golang and its dependencies to slow down our processes. So the third point again justifies itself, and the multi-stage build can be really helpful in doing so. That do not install unnecessary packages, uh, because sometimes it might lead to misconfigurations in those packages, might lead to uh, unwanted access, and even some vulnerabilities in those packages can harm the containers. And then we have decoupling the application. Again, that we talked about. What we can do is we can keep everything in one place, but that defies the requirement of the containers, right? uh, in container, we focus more on modularity, so that even if one thing fails, it we can just spin it up and it can just keep on going, rather than setting up the whole server again with everything. So again, we if we talk about, suppose one container is running a Node.js server and the second one is SQL server, and we help them connect to each other and talk to each other. So that even if the MySQL server fails, we can just spin it up again, uh, and that allows continuous running of the, like, it helps in easy deployment, and we don't have to configure too much on the application side. It will just start its work. And decoupling also helps in reducing the attack surface. Suppose if the SQL server has some vulnerability and by any chance it gets compromised, or vice versa, even if the application server has any vulnerability and it gets compromised, it cannot break out of that container, and the unless and until you have some major misconfiguration over there as well, it cannot break out of the container, and your database will be secure at that point of time. And talking about optimizing builds, we can slim down the image. So recently I have seen a tool called Docker Slim. So it promises to slim down the image by 30 times. I have not used it, but there are very positive reviews about it. So maybe you guys can check it out. Now let's see what a Docker file security and why do we need it. So here we will be talking about the images pre-built, what are the practices that we can follow, and to do that, a great start point to look for issues are Docker files. So what are Docker files? These are the blueprints of the system or container that is to be created. It is also a method of uh, mm, managing infrastructure as a code. And then one of the main components of the entire supply chain security is the Docker files. So let's talk about different security best practices. uh, so if we talk about security best practices, uh, prefer minimal base images. Again, if we prefer minimal base images, we have less number of unwanted modules, which can reduce the attack surface on its own. Then use Docker ignore file to exclude file from the builds. So it's just like git ignore. You just write down whatever pattern or whatever files you want to exclude from getting built into a container, and it will ignore those files when the containers are built. This is very helpful when we are dealing with some sensitive information in the same directory, and from there we can use Docker ignore file that will exclude the files from the build, whichever we have implemented over there. uh, Create golden images. So golden images are hardened base image that can be used for further development. So creating golden images can be a very good practice if we are working in an organization and the base thing remains constant. So if we harden the base image, there is not much we can the attacker can do, unless and until there again some major vulnerabilities that are being introduced. Then this next point is do not run containers as root. So generally what happens is uh, the containers that we run, they by default run as root, but that is not a good practice. So if we see, if we run up, so docker run minus it minus minus rm minus minus rm minus it to bash. So as you can see, it runs by default as root. Who am I? So this is not a good practice per se. So what we can do is while creating a Docker file, we create a new user that is non-root user and change that user to non-root to the non-root user, so that whenever a new container is spin up, that the user has been changed to a non-root user. So we have seen lots of things around this, that secrets are being committed in the Docker file or in the containers they are being stored. So for that purpose, we can use buildkit to pass secrets easily in and securely into the containers. So what we have seen is in Dockerfile, people pass AWS access keys, SSH keys, and even we have seen that people just copy the SSH private keys into the containers, so in order to use some git pull or anything that they wish for. But those things remain there, and which cause a very large impact on the organization or what wherever you are working on. So this is you can use buildkit, even you can use the HashiCorp Vault for the same. Then the next thing is use copy instead of add wherever possible. Yes, sorry for that. Yeah, use copy instead of add wherever possible. So we have seen this thing on the first few slides, that in the Docker file we have implemented add. But what we should have done is we should have done copy. And so why do we say that we should not use add? So what add does is it implicitly creates the destination directory when it does not exist. And the add source accept archives as a local or a remote URL as its source. And when it is being added to the container, uh, it expands and download respectively into the destination directory. So there are a few problems with the add command. If a remote URL is being used, there's a high possibility of MITM attack, and we need to then check the integrity and origin of the file again and again. So and using copy allows separating the addition of an archive from the remote location and unpacking it as different layers, which optimizes the image cache. So if we take some tar or something, and if we pass it through add command, so what it does is it takes that tar and it copies it inside the container, and it extracts it automatically, which can lead to zip bombs, and can be a very dangerous thing in that case. So what we can do is we can use copy command in a Docker file. We can then download that, and we can download that tar and copy it inside the Docker and perform the things in different layers. which also optimizes the image cache. So these are a few security best practices. One that I have not mentioned, but I kind of remember it now. If we when we see the Docker base image, let me sorry, Docker file. Yeah. So Dockerfile. Let me cat it. Dockerfile. So what we generally see is we are using Nginx latest. So it is being recommended that we use a specific version of any image that we use. So from Nginx, suppose whatever version it is, v 0.2 or 5 or whatever. Because what will happen if we the code that we are using, it might not be adapted to the newest version, or some changes in the newest version code might be there. So putting the exact number of the version of the image helps a lot in development process, and also helps breaking the code and container as well. So this is one thing. So let's move on to more security stuff. We can use linters like Hadolint that will help to build best practice Docker image. So if we go to this link, and let's see, where is it? Hadolint. Yeah. So this is a by default thing that is being kept it over here. So let me zoom it for you. Yeah. So from Debian. So by default, if nothing is mentioned, it uses latest tag. But again, always remember the tag version of the always tag the version of the image explicitly. It tells us what we need to do. Again, run export. We are exporting the node version as an environment variable, and we are doing some apt get update and installing the node version, and copying the package JSON into the app directory inside the container. So what it does says is node version is referenced but not assigned. Delete the apt get list after installing something, and avoid additional packages by specifying no install recommendations. So to for some packages to work, it requires some other packages. uh, it requires some other packages. So for that, uh, sorry, yeah, for some tools to get used, it requires some different packages. All right, and for that, it takes up all the it install all the recommended packages in order for that to work. So we can mm, stop this thing by using no install recommendation recommends flag. And once we install anything, we just delete the get lists. It's These are just security best practices that we should use. Use workdir to switch to a directory. So, and pin version in npm instead of npm install package. Use Again, we are again and again saying that we have to specify a specific version, so that if we send the Docker file to some other system, we know what all things are going to be there. Otherwise it will just take the latest package. And again, expose 80,000. So for the valid port range for the Unix system is 0265535, but again we are using the 80,000 port, and this will not work. So it tells us all this sort of things. So this is Hadolint. So some more security stuff. There is Dockle. So Dockle is used to scan images against the CIS benchmark. Let me open this. Docker. Yep. Yeah. So what Docker does is it takes the system, it takes the name of the image, and it scans the image for these parameters. If the and it has given a comparison on what things what are the things that it does. So it takes the create a user for containers that we have talked about. We should not allow it for the root user. Then if we see the ninth number, we see use copy instead of add in Dockerfile. Then do not store secrets in Docker files, and avoid sudo command. So these are different stuff that can be used in the using Docker in order to scan the image. So the next section is Secomp. So Secomp is a security feature in Linux kernel, and it can be used to restrict any system calls in the Docker container. So whenever we play CTF or anything, we see that there are some commands that are not allowed inside inside a specific machine that we have gained access to. So Secom is one of the way to do it, and there is another way is App Armor, but I will be covering Secomp only today. So let's get here. Okay. So what Secomp does is it takes a policy. I have created a sample policy over here that is it allows default actions. It allows everything, but it declines one syscall, that is mkdir. That is it will throw error. So now if we run the sudo docker run, we are running a Alpine base, where the security policy we have implemented the policy.json we have included here, and let's run it. Yeah, so it gives us a shell, so we can do all kinds of things. But what we cannot do is mkdir abc. What it will tell is the operation is not permitted. So this happens because we have put that syscall inside the error send throw error part. So for different operating system base images, there might be some different system calls. So make sure you implement like accordingly, because for Alpine somewhere the chmod works, and for Ubuntu chmod works, and for Alpine there is fchmod. So you have to look at it in a way that not all the policies would be same. So take into consideration your base image, and based upon that use the policies. Then here are some resources that I find helpful. Maybe I will add some more to it and upload the PPT. So the first one is really good. It's a YouTube video from Riz Lice. There's a book from her as well that you can see if you want to learn really in depth about containers. Then we have Dockerfile best practices, multi-stage builds, and then checkpoint comparison, tips for optimizing builds, then a different tutorial with best practices in it, and uh, how to write a secure Docker file. It's a great one by Madhu, so have a look. And yeah, that's all from my side. I am open for questions, and thank you so much.
Anyone of you have any questions? Anyone? All right. Okay, Ashwin, thank you so much for the super amazing session. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much, Ashwin. All right. Okay, moving on next, we have quiz created by Swarsha. Malav, I would like you to share the link and
Sure.
once we start.
Okay. I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is the code and joinmyquiz.com. I'll wait for everyone to join. Just paste this code. We'll wait for 2 more minutes before we start. I think that's all. Let's start. Looks like almost everyone is done. I'll wait for 2 more minutes. Okay, that's it, guys. We'll end now. Congratulations to winners. Please make sure you drop your Twitter IDs on YouTube chat so we can mention you on our Twitter handlers. Over to you, Bashid bhai.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a great learning experience. Our speakers, Preetham and Ashwin, uh, did share their knowledge, and it was great to have communication over the chat as well. Superb. All right. Thank you so much. That's it from Bhashit Pandya and Null Ahmedabad. Thank you so much. Bye. Have a great day.